The skirling pipes of Europe's only private army, the Athol Highlanders, welcome you to Blair Castle on the wide strath of Garry near Pitlochry, which for 7 centuries has been the family home of the Dukes of Athol. This stately home, probably the most popular with tourists in Scotland, started life as a medieval castle commanding the wild mountain passes to the Scottish Highlands. Whoever held Blair Athol was gatekeeper to the Grampians. With the passage of time, it became a Georgian mansion with elegant interiors and furnishings, and later an aristocratic Victorian country seat fit to join the front rank of Britain's stately homes. Despite all the changes of 700 years, it is today, as it has always been, a home to the family whose story is inextricably woven into the history of Scotland and the wider tapestry of Europe and the British Empire. There could hardly be a better introduction to a history of wars and great events than the entrance hall at Blair Castle. A veritable armoury of battle axes and shields takes us directly back to the original medieval stone fortress of Blair Athol. The collection includes a shield dating back to the Battle of Culloden and firearms used by British soldiers over the centuries. There's a fireplace that recalls the baronial feasts of the past. The preserved animal reclining by the fire is the great tilt stag, chosen in the mid-19th century as the best of 5 magnificent deer that roamed the castle park. In fact, the hall is actually Victorian, built in 1872 by the 7th Duke, a model Highland laird who took pride in chronicling the family's history. Today, Blair Castle welcomes guided tours of visitors from all around the world. This party from Germany begin their tour of the castle here. Like all good castles, there's a guardroom, complete with pictures showing the various stages of drunkenness, which were brought from a drinking club in the Isle of Man by the 2nd Duke. But Blair is a living story. Latest addition to the room is a postmodern wooden sculpture with intricate moving parts, the work of Martin Rayer in 1987. In contrast, the staircase, completed in 1756, is first evidence of the ambitious remodelling of the medieval fortress into a sumptuous Georgian mansion commissioned by the 2nd Duke. The plasterwork of the ceiling and cornices are the work of Thomas Clayton, the Edinburgh stucco artist, judged to be the finest of the age. Even with the assistance of imported Italian craftsmen, the work in the castle took 10 years to complete. This charming cosy room was where the family would read, play cards, or embroider in the light of the high window or the lamps reflected by the elegant mirror over the fireplace. In the early 18th century, afternoon tea was a luxury and a regular social occasion that demanded an appropriately elegant setting. Indeed, in the 2nd Duke's day, tea was such a precious commodity that it was kept in mahogany side tables and locked up when not in use. The 18th century Chippendale and Sheraton cabinets contain a magnificent collection of china from the famous French factory at Sèvres near Paris. A larger family collection, enough to satisfy the most avid admirer, can be seen in the castle's china room. The magnificent display reads like a roll call of famous names: Coalport, Chelsea, Meissen, Derby, Dresden, Worcester, Wedgwood, Delft, Staffordshire. The list is mouth-watering. Visitors have their favourites. Most admire the great 18th century Oriental service painted with the arms of the Duke of Athol. The embroidery panels are changed in rotation. Visiting needlework groups can arrange to see a selection of panels not on display in a private room. The 2nd Duke also transformed the old 16th century banqueting hall into the Baroque showpiece dining room we see today. He again called on Thomas Clayton to mastermind the ceiling decoration. Unfortunately, half of it collapsed in 1985 because the supporting timbers had been eaten away by woodworm. The restoration, carried out seamlessly by L. Grandison and son of Peebles, underlines that Scottish craftsmen can still be as skilled as the old masters. Thomas Bardwell painted the roundels of the 4 seasons in the ceiling. The wall panels are landscapes of the Athol estates and were painted by a local artist. The Imperial dining table has 9 extending leaves and can seat 24 guests. The Worcester dinner service includes what are known as noble guest glasses, which hold an amazing 9 pints. Useful if you have a 40-litre whisky bottle to hand. In the second Duke's day, guests would gather in the anteroom leading off the main staircase before formally entering the dining room. It now commemorates the life of Ian, the 10th Duke, who died in 1996. He and his mother Angela turned the castle into the major tourist attraction it is today. The trust that he set up in 1995 ensures that generations to come will be able to enjoy the family home of the Dukes of Athol. Moving on, but backwards in time, we're now in the Blue Bedroom in the oldest part of the castle, Cummins Tower. In the year 1269, the then Earl of Athol returned from the Crusades to find a neighbour, John Cumming, had moved in as a squatter and built himself a tower. The Earl protested to the king, but the tower still stands today. A striking feature of the Blue Bedroom is that it has the luxury of an ensuite bathroom, one of 3 installed in the castle by the 7th Duke in 1885. A famous painting, typical of the period, is the delightful 18th century conversation piece of the 4th Duke and his family by David Allen in what is known as the 4th Duke's Corridor. The Georgian Blair Castle and the sweep of the landscape make a stunning background. Known as the Planter Duke, he was so determined to play his part in the defence of the realm against Napoleon that he planted no fewer than 25 million larch trees to ensure a plentiful supply of timber for the Royal Navy's wooden walls. He's said to have fired seeds from a cannon to ensure that they were well broadcast. Unfortunately, as the trees matured, British shipbuilders were switching to ironclads. The long Napoleonic Wars dominated the times of the 4th Duke, and in an alcove are busts to Wellington and Blucher, who defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. The 2 rooms of the Derby suite are named after Lady Amelia Stanley, daughter of the 7th Earl of Derby, who married the 1st Marquis of Athol in 1659. Like all the best dynastic marriages, this increased the family wealth, and her grandson, the 2nd Duke, later inherited the sovereignty of the Isle of Man. The income from the rents and patronage were put to good use in remodelling Blair Castle in the style of a grand Georgian mansion. The dressing room is furnished almost entirely in broom wood, commonly seen as a yellow flowering shrub along Highland roads. The veneers are made by pressing the stalks of the plant together. This unique suite was made for the 3rd Duke of Athol about 1758 by George Sandeman of Perth. Though small in size, the Red Bedroom has a fine 18th century William Masters 4-poster bedstead made for the princely sum of £82 and 5 pence in 1750. The room was last slept in by Crown Prince Hirohito of Japan when he visited the castle in 1921. The drawing room represents the pinnacle of the 2nd Duke's aspirations to Georgian grandeur. A magnificent room in which to entertain, the walls are hung with crimson damask, reflected by the clear glass mirrors. Picture it lit by hundreds of flickering candles. Thomas Clayton produced his most elaborate ceiling and cornice stuccos here, and Thomas Carter a white marble chimney-piece which sets off the outstanding picture of the 3rd Duke and Duchess with their 7 children, painted by Johann Zoffany in 1767. The animal in the picture, which looks like a raccoon, may be in fact a ring-tailed lemur, which at that time was kept in a cage in a middle window near the Blue Room. The drawing room furniture is a connoisseur's delight, including Louis XVI gilt chairs, settees by Chipchase, and Regency cabinets in, of course, the Planter Duke's favourite larchwood. Romantic legend has it that Charles Edward Stuart, Bonnie Prince Charlie, stayed in this room during the Jacobite uprising of 1745. Originally a 15th century addition to Cummins Tower, The room is dedicated to those of the Athol family with allegiance to the Jacobites and is named after William, Marquis of Taliban, the first Duke's son, whose support for the Stuarts led to the forfeiture of his claim to the dukedom and estates. His younger brother, Lord George Murray, was the famous Lieutenant General to the Prince at the Battle of Culloden in April 1746, the final tragic defeat of the clans. Lord George died in Holland in 1760. The books he took with him into exile can still be seen in the castle's book room. The Taliban Tent Bed is covered in a tartan over 200 years old, said to have been formerly on an older circular bed which slept the 17 sons of Sir David Murray of Taliban, heads to the centre and feet outside. The tapestry room hides a secret. How did the first Duke come by the spectacular William and Mary state bed from Holyrood Palace? As Lord Privy Seal, he had a suite in Holyrood, but he lost his office in 1704, and being out of favour, how did he manage to bring the bed home? Nobody knows. It must have been a welcome relief for Victorian guests to escape the formal grandeur of the principal rooms and relax in the comfort of the Banvey suite. Most of the carved oak furniture was bought especially for the visit of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert in 1844. The terracotta statuette of the Queen shows her at a spinning wheel, a typical Victorian image of domesticity. It was a gift from Her Majesty to the 6th Duchess. The model figures represent a number of the original Highland game challenges. The games still take place each summer at the Athol Gathering in the superb castle grounds.
Well, we're underway now with cutting the stone. As you can see...
Here, too, are the much-prized watercolours of the 6 children of the 7th Duke and his Duchess Louisa Moncrief. There are some interesting things to note as we go down this fine staircase designed for the 2nd Duke, such as an alarming skull of an Irish elk preserved from prehistoric times. At the foot of the stairs is a suit of jousting armour made for the 6th Duke when, as Lord Glenlyon, he took part in the Eglinton tournament in 1839. The Athol Highlanders were first raised by the 4th Duke in 1778 as a regular military regiment to fight in America in the War of Independence. Not everyone appears to have been happy about that, and the regiment was actually posted to garrison duty in Ireland. Their rebirth as a ceremonial regiment was secured when they provided a personal bodyguard for Queen Victoria throughout her 3-week stay at the castle in 1844. The following year she conferred on the 2nd Lord Glenlyon and his successors the right to raise a private army, today the only one left in Europe. The 10th Duke reformed the regiment in 1966. Every May, the 100-strong Highlanders with their pipers parade in the presence of their chieftain John Murray, the 11th Duke. A distant cousin of the 10th Duke, he succeeded to the title in 1996 and lives in South Africa. His eldest son holds the title of Marquis of Taliban. That historic visit by Queen Victoria was to have other important benefits for the Dukes of Athol. Her celebrated love of the scenic beauty of Scotland was the stimulus for the birth of the Highland tourist industry. Everyone wanted to experience the grandeur of the landscape and to discover for themselves the rich culture of the clans. Rail travel was also just beginning to open up the remoter areas of Britain. So in 1863, a line was built through the Athol estates on the way from Dunkeld to Inverness, bringing a windfall of prosperity to the 7th Duke. He used this new fortune to upgrade Blair Castle from a Georgian mansion into a Victorian showpiece fit to join the front rank of great stately homes. There's even a Victorian child's nursery, recreated with dolls, games, toys, clothes and furnishings, which have all played their part in the childhood of the Athol family. They include the 10th Duke's christening robe, which he wore in 1931. Today, as it has since it was built by the 7th Duke in 1877, the magnificent ballroom frequently resounds to the skirl of pipes and fiddles as guests dance, and how the Scots do love to dance at Highland balls, wedding receptions and grand parties, since it's now open to anyone wanting a memorable celebration. Appropriately, above the stage is the portrait of Neil Gow, the celebrated fiddler and composer to the 2nd, 3rd and 4th Dukes. His music is often played today, and his fiddle is brought out on special occasions. One's sense of the greatness of the place is enhanced by such treasures as the trophies of weapons, drums and chain armour brought back from the Sudan by the 8th Duke, and a display devoted to another family musician, MacGregor. An impressive range of stags' heads keep you company around the room, all from the extensive Athol estate, which is proud of its tradition of red deer management. That successive dukes have lavished as much care on their natural surroundings as on the castle is evident in the 2,500 acres of gardens. Before setting out on a tour of the grounds, you'll probably visit the shop and restaurant for a short break. There's a lot of ground to cover. Among the attractions are the delightful walks in Diana's Grove, dedicated to Diana the Huntress. The ruins of the 12th century St. Bride's Kirk. The 9 acres of the formal Hercules walled garden, which still closely resemble those laid out in 1758. With the wider estate are waymarked trails, pony trekking and sporting grounds. The last week in May sees the Athol Gathering with traditional Highland games and the annual parade of the Athol Highlanders. The parade is led by the chieftain, the 11th Duke, and the pipers and men of the Athol Highlanders. Blair Castle began life as a military fortress commanding the way to the Highlands. The early clan chiefs were the gatekeepers of the Grampians. It evolved into an elegant Georgian mansion, was transformed into a Victorian stately home, and today is a bastion standing at the crossroads of the past and the present of European culture. Its chieftain, the 11th Duke, is still the gatekeeper, the figurehead of what is now a modern, forward-looking enterprise, striding steadfastly into the future.